The simple fact is that most writers are boring, and in fact most writing is boring. And you might be thinking, well, this doesn't apply to me. The truth is that you might be surprised, because we review and read hundreds of manuscripts every single month that get sent to us from people who are looking to publish. And a lot of them have been told by friends and family that their books are fantastic. But when we read them from a professional lens, we can actually see that most writers make the same mistakes that are making their books boring. First, I will describe what I mean by boring writing. So what are these mistakes that I'm talking about that we see day in and day out? The first up is an overuse of very predictable storylines. So people using cliches, things that we've seen over and over before. The other mistake is characters, where people don't build enough depth into their characters. They often have too many characters. Or the other issue is they haven't created a strong enough bond with the character. So we don't have a genuine connection to their main character. Another big mistake that we see almost daily, and this is pretty much in 100% of the manuscripts that get sent to us, is pacing. So people don't pace manuscripts correctly. And truth be told, with that one, that is hard to do. You need a professional editor, because even professional writers who've written 10 books or more still make this mistake. The other thing that we find makes manuscripts boring is a lack of emotional engagement. So if when someone is reading your book, it doesn't give them an emotional reaction, a deeply rooted emotional reaction, then it becomes boring quite quickly. The other mistake is not having stakes. So not having something that really makes the reader say, oh my God, what is about to happen? I need to find out. The stakes and the tension are rising all the time. And then the other thing we see is people are too descriptive, right? Their writing is just too verbose, is the technical term. But what that really means, too much is going on to describe simple scenes that don't need that much description. And when you describe too much, it slows everything down, and then things get very boring. I think I've harped on this point for long enough about boring writing. The reason this is so important is because if your writing becomes boring, people won't read your whole book, and of course you'll get bad reviews. So I wanted to really labor the point and explain all the various ways that your writing can become boring. So now you're probably sat there thinking, well, Patrick, I hope you're about to tell me how I can actually fix these problems rather than continuing to bang on about boring writing. So yes, here are the ways to fix those problems. And these aren't going to be the usual advice that you see all the time. One of the key things I'm going to say is don't be afraid of taking risks. As a writer, you need to try new things, even if it doesn't technically fit into the stereotypes of this is good writing or here is really good writing advice. Follow Ernest Hemingway's tips. You need to occasionally do something different, because so much has been written that for readers, they want to find something different, catches them by surprise. And so take those risks when you're writing. The other mistake I see a lot is that people often have a really unique voice. And then they come to us and they say, I got some feedback on my writing and people said I should change this, change that, etc. And actually what was happening, we see this a lot with traditional publishers, is they're editing out what makes that writer unique. They're taking away the unique voice. And what you need to do, again, to stand out in, of course, what is crowded, everything these days is crowded, you need to double down on your unique voice. And having the right editor is going to help you do that. Professional editors will pull out your unique voice. They won't tell you to change it because it doesn't fit into a stereotypical writing style. Now, another point about editing, and this is why it's so important to have a professional editor who knows what they're doing, is we see a lot of manuscripts get over-edited. So don't over-edit your work. You want to keep that natural voice like we were speaking about. And again, a professional editor is going to help you strike the right balance between editing and then going too far. At this point, again, it feels like I'm laboring it, but when you over-edit work, you can really edit out the soul of your book. And that's really the key point here, is that to get your writing to come across, it's very emotional. It needs to connect with the reader. And so I really want you to think about keeping your soul. And ultimately, one of the phrases I always like to use is that when it's a creative process, the best thing is you pushed out. So how you naturally would talk, how you would naturally do things, and then put that out to the world. And then, of course, naturally, not everybody is going to like that, but it will connect with the right people. Now, we've spoken about the mistakes that make writing boring, how you can correct those mistakes, but how do you actually know if your writing is boring? So here are a few ways to tell. Of course, rejection from agents, traditional publishers is definitely one of them. So really be very mindful of the feedback that you get, because they will often not give you their real, true feelings on your book. They'll naturally soften it. And sometimes they won't even really give you much feedback at all. But you have to try and read between the lines and then figure out, what do they really mean here? What are they really saying here? And then if you see, of course, the same feedback popping up multiple times, that's a really clear signal that that's probably the root cause of what's making your reading boring and what you need to address. This is the other reason that beta readers are so important. And I would say beta readers that are not your friends and family. Join an actual group or connect with readers somehow who don't mind hurting your feelings. Of course, a professional editor is great for this because they are focused on making the book the very best it can be. They don't worry about your feelings, they just want to improve your writing. And one of the key signals here will be people not being very connected to your characters, not having a big emotional reaction to what you've written about. But the biggest one of all, I often say to people, is if you're worried about your writing being boring, is reread your own work. And if you find yourself losing interest or just, getting bored, fidgeting, etc., that's a really good indicator that you've gone down that route and you need to address some of these issues and items to make your writing more engaging. What this is all leading towards is moving away from boring and moving towards writing that is really exciting. So to excite your readers, what you need to do is you need to be more yourself, so keep your voice a lot more unique. You also need to make those characters really interesting, really relatable, make people excited to find out what's going on, and then break the rules a little bit here and there, like we said. So take risks, do slightly different things, anything that just shakes stuff up so that when people are reading it, they're excited about the work. Where you can, surprise the reader and then inject conflict. Conflict is one of the best ways to keep people engaged and keep people reading, because they keep wondering what's going to happen next. We have to keep reading to figure out, where is the story going? What is going to happen to this character? The good news is that boring writing, or being a boring writer, is not something that you're stuck with. There are very simple ways to change this, as I have explained. Take those risks, give it a try. Let me know in the comments down below why you think your writing might be boring and which of these tips you're going to implement to make it a lot more exciting. YouTube will now be recommending more writing and publishing advice right here, so go ahead and watch another one of my value-packed videos now.